I want to go over a couple of concepts that have to do with Chapter 4 and Chapter 8. When we talk about emotions, there's a term that comes up, and that's debilitative emotions. I'm going to share with you about a trending topic right now called broken heart syndrome. And broken heart syndrome has a direct connection to debilitative emotions. What debilitative emotions are emotions that have an effect on how we function, and they're different than facilitative emotions. Let me give you an example. Our family dog, Ripley, he died in 2012. This was my first dog. When my parents told me that Ripley was sick, I was really, really upset. But I was processing it. We had to put Ripley down, and it was still a very painful memory in my head. I was upset. I was angry. I didn't understand why Ripley had to die so young. But the sadness was facilitative. Being sad was the proper response to something like losing a pet. Being sad helped me process Ripley's death and move forward in my life. A debilitative emotion is something that has longer intensity and duration. So if I had a debilitative emotion with the death of Ripley, I may have experienced depression rather than sadness. I may not have gotten out of bed. I may have stopped eating. I may not have been getting enough sleep. I may not have been socializing like I normally would. So there is a difference between facilitative and debilitative emotions. Broken heart syndrome is a new term that's come out in about, the last decade or two. And with this term, there are some things you should know. First of all, I encourage you all to do a quick Google search of broken heart syndrome and see just how many articles are out there right now talking about how real this is. I have a story here for you, and this is about a woman named Sherry. And Sherry nearly collapsed at her aunt's funeral. And this was really shocking to her because she had expected her aunt's death and she knew it was coming, and she had time to process that her aunt was dying. But what ended up happening at the funeral, this article talks about how she had chest pressure. And the diagnosis that followed was that Sherry had broken heart syndrome. Half of her heart literally stopped pumping blood. An otherwise healthy 50-year-old woman was diagnosed with broken heart syndrome. This was, for her, a toxic mixture of intense grief and unrelated work stress, and it was producing just the right amount of stress hormones that triggered a condition that many people have denied in the past. People have thought, oh, broken heart syndrome, that's not real. That's not a thing. So Dr. Ian Whitstein, he's an assistant professor of medicine and cardiology at Johns Hopkins Hospital. He was interviewed, and he wanted to share a couple of things about broken heart syndrome. First of all, it's curable. So with the right medication, folks are able to jump right back into normal life. It says in the patients that are diagnosed with broken heart syndrome, there's an elevated level of stress hormones that's 30 times the normal level you would see in someone who has regular stress hormones. So what happens is, or one theory at least, is that your hormones produce too much of the stress hormone or that fight or flight reaction, that it causes an adverse reaction in your heart muscle. So if you're nervous, your heart starts beating faster. We all know that, because adrenaline binds to the heart to tell it to beat faster. When this adrenaline surge happens, calcium also rushes into the heart cells to allow the heart to contract more vigorously and squeeze more strongly. But if too much calcium floods the cells, Dr. Whitstein says that instead of beating more vigorously, the heart becomes overwhelmed and stunned. That means that at least temporarily, the heart cannot be a very effective pump. So this is unlike a heart attack, Dr. Wittstein says. He explains that where the cells are injured or killed in a heart attack, in broken heart syndrome, these cells are not killed. They're just temporarily dysfunctional. Now, when we talk about facilitative and debilitative emotions, it's incredibly fascinating to see that researchers at Johns Hopkins University are finding that our emotions are having a direct physical impact on our health. And think about some of your terms from chapter 4, how emotion labor, withholding our emotions, can cause that build up of more emotions. And what happens with that is if we have more stress added, we can snap, right? So all of these concepts, they really connect together. Just a couple more things about this article. The symptoms really truly mimic a heart attack. So Dr. Wittstein says you'll experience things like chest pain, weakness, pain that radiates up and down the arms and to the neck. You may become nauseous, you may vomit, you may become sweaty. So if you are experiencing any of these things, Dr. Wittstein says, don't try to guess what it is, go to a hospital. Now the final point, and I'm very curious as to what you all think about this, Dr. Wittstein says that there's a clear distinction in terms of sex as to whether more males or females come in. And in this case, he says what they see more of is females. Now, there's different theories for this, but the overwhelming number is that 90% of those that experience this are female. Some of the ideas are that Dr. Wittstein says that many females take on not only household duties, but also work duties. And so they become so overwhelmed and taking care of others that when something bad happens or stressful, it can be detrimental. So that's broken heart syndrome. There's two more things I want to talk about in this lecture, and that has to do with chapter 8. The first thing I'll start off with is talking about Knapp's relational stages. And I have a little treat for you because you had analyzed Lars and Bianca in Lars and the Real Girl. Well, I actually have an overview for you of how Lars and Bianca went through Knapp's relational stages. So I thought this would be really fun for us to see. So here's what I have. And some of these scenes you didn't get to experience in the assignment because I had you look at different links, but I encourage you to watch the whole film if you're up for it. So here's what we've got. This is an analysis from a communication and film book. It says, during dinner at Gus and Karen's house, Lars and Bianca already seem to be moving beyond Knapp's experimenting stage towards intensifying. Apparently, they already know much about each other. They sit in close proximity, and they frequently have quiet conversations. On the way to Dr. Dagmar's office, Lars discloses to Bianca interesting tidbits about the town and his family background. Karen even gets caught up in the moment and shares details about her work, followed by a glare from Gus. Later, Lars takes Bianca to a lake where he and Gus used to play as children, because he wants Bianca to know more about himself. As they move towards the integrating stage, Lars and Bianca share many activities as a couple. They go shopping together, they go to church, and they go to parties. A close observation of Lars's cubicle at work also shows an increase in relational artifacts, or pictures. This again demonstrates his relationship with Bianca, and in the eyes of the community, their relationship is real. Lars and Bianca also demonstrate Knapp's coming apart stages. The first sign of differentiating is a conflict they have about Bianca's busy schedule. According to Lars, Bianca is spending too much time away from him. Bianca volunteers at the local hospital, she works part-time as a mannequin, and she is a school board member. In other words, they are experiencing the connection versus autonomy dialect. Lars denies that Bianca needs moments apart from him, and instead, he believes that Bianca should be available to him at all times. Only later does Lars reveal to Dr. Dagmar the true source of his frustrations. He asked Bianca to marry him, and she said no. Now remember, Lars wrote that story. Her rejection seems to fuel Lars's advancements towards the circumscribing stage, as shown by his bowling date with Margot. So what you didn't see was that Lars actually went out with Margot, the blonde girl at the beginning, one-on-one, and they went bowling together in town. Even though Lars tells Margot that he is committed to Bianca and would never cheat on her, obviously their relationship, Lars and Bianca, is in decline. Shortly thereafter, Lars terminates his relationship with Bianca by performing the script of her death. It is important to notice that even though Lars has never had a real girlfriend, he performs the roles of intimacy rather well. Each of these examples shows how relationships, although unique, can also be predictable and scripted. So there you go. All right, there's just one more piece I want to share with you, and we'll end this on a bit of a serious note. There's a term in the beginning of chapter 8 that talks about something called the social exchange theory. And this has a bit of an equation to it that says the rewards minus the costs equals the outcome. So what you can think about with this is that people stay in relationships, or they choose to stay in nap stages and go back to the coming together, or even survive through the coming apart, because they feel there's more rewards. Now, rewards can be both tangible and intangible. And a tangible reward is something that we can touch. So, for example, a reward that I had growing up with my parents was shelter. They provided a home for me. And while that may seem shallow, that's a reward, and that's a big reward. And we also have things that are intangible. My parents also provided me love and security. And that's not something we can touch. Now, one thing that people don't understand is that we can look at the social exchange theory through our own lens. So if you know someone who's in a relationship that you find to be abusive, you would obviously see that the costs of that relationship outweigh any rewards for that individual staying in the relationship, and the outcome would be that you would leave the relationship. But what's tough about this is we have to practice that term from chapter 2, cognitive complexity. And cognitive complexity states that we look at things from a variety of frameworks. Well, someone who's in an abusive relationship may see it differently. They may see their rewards as money or shelter, or the individual being nice sometimes or providing gifts, and the cost could be either mental or physical abuse, but to that particular individual, they value those rewards more. And so their outcome is that they deal with the negativity and they stay in the relationship. Really process that. It is hard to understand. And I am guilty myself of looking at some other relationships and thinking, why would you stay with that individual? It wasn't until social exchange theory that I really started to understand it more. My lens is different from their lens. So I hope you have a better understanding of some terms from chapter 4, including broken heart syndrome, which was outside of the chapter, social exchange theory, and a fun little overview of nap stages. If you have any questions, send me a message. Thanks, guys.